This is number seven podcast.
Number 7 podcast.
All right, welcome everyone back to the number 7 podcast channel. I hope you're all ready for another one of our deep dives. You know we love a good story. And today we're going to be taking a look at the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Now, this book by Mark Twain, it's considered an American classic. It follows the journey of Huckleberry Finn. He's a rebellious boy, runs away from his abusive father, and then he meets Jim, a runaway slave, and they travel down the Mississippi River together, seeking freedom and adventure. But it's not all fun and games, right? Along the way, they encounter all sorts of challenges, and the book really forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about society, about morality, about prejudice. So let's jump right into it, shall we? The first few chapters introduce us to Huck and his life with the widow Douglas. She's this well-meaning woman who's trying to civilize him, teach him manners, religion, all that. But Huck, well, he just ain't cut out for that kind of life. He's restless. He craves adventure. He'd much rather be out exploring, getting into trouble with his friend, Tom Sawyer. Speaking of Tom, we see him again in these early chapters. And it's interesting how Twain uses their childhood games, like pretending to be robbers and outlaws, to kind of hint at the bigger themes of freedom and rebellion that will play out later in the book. But, their carefree childhood takes a dark turn. When Huck's abusive father, Pap, comes back into the picture, Pap's character is really, he's a stark representation of ignorance and prejudice. And his treatment of Huck is just heartbreaking. It's during this time that we also meet Jim, Miss Watson's slave. And Huck, desperate for any kind of guidance, he turns to Jim and his magic hairball for answers about his future. It shows how, even in such a dark situation, people still seek hope and meaning. Now, chapters 5 through 7 are all about Huck's escape from Pap, and it's pretty intense. He has to fake his own death. He's resourceful, though. He's clever, he's desperate to get away, and it really shows us how far he's willing to go to survive. That escape leads him to Jackson's Island, and that's where he runs into Jim, who has also run away. At first, there's this fear, distrust between them. They've been taught to see each other as different, as enemies almost. But as they spend time together, alone on that island, they start to realize that those societal barriers, they don't really mean much when you're facing the raw elements of nature, right? They need each other to survive. And that's where their friendship begins to blossom. It's one of the most powerful elements of the story, I think. By chapters 12 to 15, they're making their way down the river on a raft. This journey becomes a symbol of freedom, but it's not without its perils. They encounter a wrecked steamboat. They have a run-in with some dangerous criminals. And they have to make some tough choices about right and wrong, especially when survival is at stake. You really start to see how their experiences are shaping them, both individually and as a pair. Their bond strengthens with each challenge they overcome. But then they run into another kind of danger, the Grangerfords and the Shepherdsons. These two families, they're locked in this bitter, pointless feud. Huck gets caught in the middle of it, and he's horrified by the violence he witnesses, the senseless killings, the hatred that just keeps perpetuating itself. It makes him realize that maybe escaping society altogether is the only way to truly be free. Of course, their journey wouldn't be complete without a little bit of trickery. Chapters 19 through 23 introduce the Duke and the King, these two con men who latch on to Huck and Jim. They're always scheming, always looking to make a quick buck. And their antics? They're outrageous, but they also highlight the gullibility of the people they encounter. Huck, being young and impressionable, gets caught up in their schemes, which really tests his moral compass. Can he remain good while participating in their deception? It's a question that hangs over him as the stakes get higher and higher. Those schemes culminate in chapters 24 to 31, with their most despicable act yet. They impersonate the brothers of a deceased man to try and steal his inheritance. Huck is disgusted by their cruelty, especially when he sees how it affects the innocent Wilkes sisters. His conscience just won't let him stand by and watch them get hurt. So he decides to expose the truth, which leads to this dramatic confrontation in a graveyard. The con men are caught, but it leaves Huck and Jim's own freedom in jeopardy. By chapters 32 to 43, Huck is facing a real moral dilemma. Society has taught him that helping a runaway slave is a sin, but his heart tells him something different. He genuinely cares about Jim, and he struggles with this internal conflict. He even writes a letter to Miss Watson, betraying Jim's location. But then he has this incredible moment of clarity. He realizes that he can't turn Jim in. He chooses friendship over societal expectations, even if it means, in his words, going to hell. It's a pivotal moment in his development, shows how far he's come from the boy we met at the beginning of the story. But fate, as it always does, throws another wrench into their plans. Jim gets captured and sold, leaving Huck devastated. But he's determined to save his friend. He sets off to the Phelps farm where Jim is being held. Now, this is where things take another turn. Chapters 34 to 40 bring back our old friend Tom Sawyer into the mix. And let me tell you, things get pretty wild. Huck gets mistaken for Tom. Then the real Tom shows up and decides to play along. And they come up with this elaborate, ridiculous plan to free Jim. Tom's plan, it's entertaining, but it also highlights the danger of romantic idealism. They're risking their lives for this grand adventure, when it turns out Jim was already free. Miss Watson had set him free in her will. It's a moment of pure irony that really makes you think about the absurdity of the whole situation. And finally, in chapters 41 to 43, Jim's escape comes to a head. It's chaotic. It ends with Tom getting shot, a reminder of the real danger they faced. And Huck, well, he decides he's had enough of civilization. He's going to light out for the territory instead. It's a fitting end for this restless soul. So there you have it. Part 1 of our deep dive into the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. We've seen Huck grow from a mischievous boy to a young man with a strong moral compass, willing to stand up for what he believes in, even if it means going against everything he's been taught. But this is just the beginning. We'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the themes and symbolism of this incredible book. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss it. And if you have any other books you'd love for us to discuss, let us know in the comments below. We always love to hear from you. All right, welcome back everyone to the Number 7 podcast channel for part 2 of our deep dive into the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. We really went through the whole story in part 1, so I thought it'd be good to take a step back in this part and look at some of the bigger themes and ideas in the book. Like, one of the things that really stands out is how Mark Twain uses satire to criticize the society of his time. It's almost like he's holding up a mirror, right, to all the hypocrisy and prejudice. Like when we look at the Widow Douglas, she's trying to teach Huck all about being civilized, manners and religion. But to Huck, it feels so suffocating. And Twain seems to be suggesting that maybe sometimes true goodness isn't about blindly following rules. Then there's Pap. He's just awful. But his character is so important because he represents the dark undercurrent of racism that was so prevalent at the time. And it's not just that Twain presents these ideas, he contrasts them. Like, amidst all that darkness, we have the incredible friendship between Huck and Jim. It defies all the societal norms. They're supposed to be enemies, but they become like brothers. Makes you wonder, about the power of human connection. Whether it can truly overcome the barriers that society tries to impose. And Huck's moral dilemma, that's another huge theme. He's torn between what he's been taught and what his heart is telling him. He knows he's supposed to turn Jim in, but he just can't bring himself to do it. He even thinks he's going to hell for helping Jim, but he does it anyway. And it really makes you think about what's more important, right? Following the rules or following your conscience. Now, let's not forget the Mississippi River itself. It's more than just a setting. It's almost like a character in the book, a symbol of freedom, but also danger and unpredictability, just like life, I guess. And some of the most powerful scenes are those quiet moments when Huck and Jim are alone on the raft, surrounded by this vast river, vulnerable to the elements, but also finding this incredible peace and connection with nature. It's almost spiritual. And of course, we got to talk about the humor, the Duke and the King, those con men. They're hilarious. But their scams also expose the gullibility of the people they encounter, and maybe even our own desire to believe in a good story, even if it's a lie. So it's this mix of humor and social commentary and this deep exploration of human connection.
That's what makes the adventures of Huckleberry Finn so timeless, I think. It makes us laugh. It makes us think. And it leaves us with this hope that maybe empathy and compassion can overcome even the most deeply rooted prejudices. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Number 7 podcast channel. It's great to have you back for the final part of our deep dive into the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And I'm so excited to have with us today our literary expert to share their insights on this book. We've covered so much ground already. We've talked about Huck and Jim's adventures, the satire, the social commentary, the moral dilemmas. But now I really want to hear your perspective on what makes this book such a masterpiece. What about it continues to resonate with readers even all these years later?
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned moral dilemmas. I think one of the most striking things about this novel is its exploration of individual conscience, especially when it clashes with societal pressure.
It's true. Huck's decision to help Jim, even believing he'll go to hell for it, that's such a powerful moment. He's choosing to follow his heart, even though it means going against everything he's been taught.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that Huck's decision isn't driven by intellectual arguments or philosophical debates. He acts on instinct, on a gut feeling that what society is telling him is just plain wrong. It's the power of empathy winning out over years of indoctrination.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the power of human connection to change our perspectives. But what about Tom Sawyer coming back into the picture, turning Jim's escape into this almost a absurd performance. What do you make of that?
Tom's return is fascinating because he presents a stark contrast to Huck's moral development. Unlike Huck, who grapples with his conscience on a very personal level, Tom views everything through the lens of adventure stories. He romanticizes the situation, turns Jim's very real plight into a game. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of blind idealism.
It's almost as if he's completely oblivious to the danger Jim is in.
Precisely. And the irony of Jim already being free just adds another layer to Twain's critique. All of Tom's elaborate schemes, the risks they take, are ultimately meaningless. It highlights the absurdity of prejudice and how it can lead to such pointless actions.
So what do you think is the lasting message of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn? What can modern readers take away from this story?
For me, it's a powerful reminder that individual conscience matters. Huck's journey challenges us to question what we've been taught, to confront our own prejudices, and to have the courage to stand up for what we believe is right, even when it goes against the grain.
That's such a powerful thought. And even though Huck lights out for the territory at the end, he leaves us with a lot to ponder. The journey down the Mississippi might be over, but the journey of self-discovery, the questioning of our own beliefs, that's something that continues long after we close the book.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It was my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We love sharing these literary adventures with you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Number 7 podcast channel. If you have any other books you'd like us to explore, let us know in the comments below. We always love to hear from you. Until next time, happy reading, everyone.